Excuse me, I'm sorry. My name is Steve Cato, and I was born in 1966 with a congenital heart defect known as tricuspid atresia. Now, if you aren't familiar with that defect, tricuspid atresia means that my tricuspid valve, which is really just the door between the right atrium and the right ventricle, does not exist. A joke I have is that tricuspid refers to the valve, and atresia is a Latin word which translated into Southern means it's not there. And because I don't have one, my right ventricle is very small and it's almost cut off from the rest of my heart. I write a blog named Adventures of a Funky Heart, which I know that's a strange name, but a friend gave that to me, and a doctor also said one time, rolled his eyes and says, well, I guess I've just got to accept the fact that your heart is a little bit funky and it will do what it wants to. So that's where that came from. And I write about growing up with a heart defect, and I write about the latest in congenital heart research and the news about advances in the field. I try to make it interesting, and I try to use a little humor, so hopefully you'll keep coming back and reading a little bit more every day. And I want to try to give you information about heart defects that you can use, but do it a little bit at a time, so you don't get that feeling like you're standing there trying to drink an entire fire hose blowing down your throat. Usually, when I get a chance to talk to a group like this, I talk about spreading awareness of congenital heart defects, and I talk about cardiac kids, which is what I call the youngsters, and I also talk about adults living with a heart defect, what I call heart warriors. And I'm scheduled to be on the adult panel later today, and I'm going to be around the rest of the day. That's my plans. So if you want to talk to me about anything like that, I'll be here, and I'm more than happy to talk to you. But right now, I've asked for a little bit of time just to tell you a story. I was born on a Tuesday, and on Fridays when they started to realize that something, Friday they started to realize that something wasn't quite right with me. So I don't know if Mom noticed it first, but that's probably the way it happened, because you know moms know their babies better than anyone else, and they're almost the first one to pick up any problem. So they took me to my pediatrician, who is still alive and happy, and I happened to saw him a couple weeks ago when I was at the hospital giving some blood for an INR test, and I asked him, what are you doing here? And he says, I work here. What are you doing here? And I literally walked right into that one. But they took me to my pediatrician, and he figured out that I had some type of heart problem, but he wasn't quite sure what. So he sent me to the nearest big hospital that could help me. The doctors there did the examination and scratched their chin and told my parents that I had tricuspid atresia and they should take me home and love me, because I wasn't going to be here. My parents didn't think a whole lot of that state, and the pediatrician just about flipped his lid. In fact, he pretty much said that was completely unacceptable. So he started looking around, and he found 4 places that could possibly try a surgical repair: Johns Hopkins, Mayo Clinic, the University of Virginia, and the Texas Heart Institute. Mayo and Texas he threw out right away because of the travel distance. Now, I'm in South Carolina, if you don't happen to know, so that's where we're starting from. Virginia, which was his own medical school, he eliminated because he didn't think they had enough experience with the procedure. So that left us with Johns Hopkins. He called Hopkins, talked to the right people, and things were set up for later that summer. My parents were going to take me to Baltimore, and I was going to be evaluated, and if the Hopkins surgeons thought they could do something for me, they would try the surgery. Well, that very night, all hell broke loose. I went into heart failure. My heart rate shot up to 200 beats per minute, and they rushed me to my local community hospital, which has about 112 beds. It's a very small facility. I was there a week while they tried to get me stabilized. In the meantime, my pediatrician is working the phones. He's talking to the doctors at Hopkins, answering their questions, telling them everything that he can think of, everything they want to know, and in return, they're telling him that I need to get up there as soon as I can. Well, didn't want me to fly. I had to get up there though. So Dad picked me up at the hospital and drove home to pick up Mama. And we immediately left for Baltimore. Now, remember, this was 1967. I-95 hasn't been completed yet. So after driving all day, they needed a break, and they stopped at a hotel in Petersburg, Virginia. They had been asleep about an hour when Mama got up to check on me. She happened to glance out the window, and it was snowing as hard as she had ever seen snow. I'm sorry. I was thinking about it. I went down to the kitchen last week. You know, the big snowstorm that took Washington apart last week and the one that just a day or two. But I went down to the kitchen and looked in the fridge, found some water, and I was standing there drinking it. And Dad says, I've only seen snow that hard one time before. And Mom takes a deep breath and she says, yeah. She woke Daddy up, and we were back in the car and moving within 5 minutes. Cars were stuck in the snow all along the road. Daddy was stopping every 15 minutes to wipe the windshield off with an old rag he'd found in the trunk. And when they passed through Washington, he had actually thought about putting me and Mom on a train to Baltimore and catching up with us later. And it's a good thing he didn't, because he found out later that the snow was so bad that the railroad had actually shut the trains down for the night. 3 families from out of state were expected in the Children's Medical Center that day, and we were the only ones who made it. The Hopkins doctors examined me, and they asked my parents for permission to do a catheterization. And that took a while. And after the catheterization, the head cardiologist came out and sat down to talk to my parents. And he says, he is down to hours. We need to operate right now. And he added that the odds of surviving the operation were 50-50. But without it, I had absolutely no chance. My parents had about 5 minutes to think it all over before they had to decide if they were going to risk this surgery or they were just going to let me slip away. I was taken into the operating room at 10:30 that night, and the operation ended at about 3 in the morning. And my parents didn't leave the hospital until they saw me afterwards. So it was almost daybreak when they finally shoved them out the door and told them to go to a boarding house about a block away. Now, when this thing was set up and I got the first schedule, I was only supposed to be on the adult panel. And I've got to admit that I begged Karen for a few moments. Now, I almost embarrassed myself. I begged her so hard. Because that surgery took place on the night of February the 17th, 1967, 43 years ago almost. My parents are just ordinary folks. They're both retired. Mama works retail. Dad's a retired textile chemist. But that night, they turned themselves into a heart mom and a heart dad, just like you guys. And I am here today because they've always been willing to go one more mile, ask one more question, and explore one more option. So I appreciate Karen letting me talk to you, and I wanted to take a few moments and tell you my story and encourage you to hang in there no matter what, as bad as it gets. And on behalf of all the cardiac kids running around and all of us who make it to be heart warriors, I just say thank you. Thank you very much.